and gentlemen, I hope you've had an adequate break and you're ready to dive back into the expanding world of procurement and supply chain sector here in the Middle East. Do remember to use Twitter or indeed your Instagram at #IPSCconference and enjoy that social media opportunity. Now, we're going to be going forwards with our panel discussion 2, entitled Disruption in Procurement, the Shift from Savings-Driven to Value-Driven. Now, to moderate this session, I'm delighted to welcome back onto the stage Percy Engineer, Regional Head of Blue Ocean Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Percy Engineer.
Thank you once again. Yes.
And he is going to be joined by the following panelists. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the stage, Dr. T. Bala, Commercial Manager, O&G Engineering, WLL Kuwait. Shailene Shakir, Head of Logistics, Jumbo Electronics. Ali Sadadine, Procurement Control Director, EFECO. And Abhijit Devda, Head of Procurement at Centrum Dubai. Gentlemen, delighted to have you all with us. Please give them all a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Percy, I'm going to hand over to you. I believe we're going to have a chat. And then again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please write them down as we go through, because there's going to be a 5 to 10 minute interaction with you.
Thank you, Muli. Welcome and good afternoon once again. Many of procurement functions put large savings numbers up in lights when contracts are signed, and then clock off, leaving the executives wondering where all the money has gone. When done well, contract management can deliver on the promises made and make sure you get what you signed for. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing about the role of procurement in terms of spending savings and how much and when. And can I put this first question to Dr. Bala?
Thank you, Mr. Percy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be part of this prestigious conference as a panelist. Basically, I'm from a construction background, construction industry. So let me start this discussion with the background of construction activities that is happening in GCC for this year. So according to MED.com, currently we are ongoing projects, construction projects are in the value of around $140 billion. So imagine the value, $140 billion. Any disruption to procurement contributes 70% of the construction activities. So any disruption to procurement can cost you millions and billions of dollars, loss. So that's why procurement is more value-driven rather than cost-driven. Procurement is no more viewed as a cost-cutting process. It is viewed as a strategic capability every organization should develop. Now, let me put some, what is procurement disruption? And a few examples of procurement disruption happened recently. Procurement disruption means, take an example, a case where in the year March 2000, a powerful lightning would strike US New Mexico, which resulted in a huge electrical surge, resulted in a major fire accident in Royal Philips factory. The importance of Royal Philips factory, the Royal Philips, they are the only suppliers of microchips for Nokia and Ericsson. So immediately, the factory shut down, and Nokia and Ericsson both are in a deep crisis. Nokia managed to come out of the crisis, whereas Ericsson could not come out. Ericsson ended up with a loss of $400 million of sales, whereas Nokia managed to come out of the crisis. How Nokia can come out of the crisis is they have something called business continuity arrangements. They have a single sourcing policy at plant level, but at the same time, they have redundant suppliers operating globally. So the moment the suppliers, Philips shut down, they switch over to their redundant supplier, so they manage to save their supply chain, thereby they reduce the loss. So here, the important aspect of this is the risk analysis. When you say the value-driven, value comes from analyzing the risk of your suppliers. So organizations should develop risk profiles of suppliers. Many organizations, according to statistics, more than 74% of the organizations, they face at least one disruption in their procurement process. Average loss was estimated as $3 million. So imagine the value of procurement which is going to be contributing as a value creation rather than a cost cutting.
So Bala, you mean that it's all about managing the spend and regularly updating that map?
Yeah.
And that will obviously give you more invaluable insights.
Yeah. Today morning there was a lot of discussions about spend analysis. Now, how you will identify your supplier risk profile? Important aspect is organizations, they don't go for risk profile of the lower tier suppliers. An analysis indicate that more than 50% of the procurement problems arise from your tier 1 suppliers. And another 30% come from your lower tier suppliers. That means it's very important to identify your spending of suppliers. When you talk about spend analysis, there are different dimensions to spend analysis. Today morning we had a various discussions related to spend analysis. We have commodity spend analysis. We have supplier spend analysis. When I talk about supplier spend analysis, you need to categorize your supplier into a vital, critical, and one-time supplier. Vital supplier means they are the contributors of a major procurement value. They contribute almost 80% of procurement value. They are your vital suppliers. So you should have the risk profile of all these suppliers. In addition to that, you have critical suppliers. Critical suppliers, they are actually the competitors to the vital suppliers. So you need to keep them as a business continuity arrangements so that if there is any failure happens in the tier 1 suppliers, you can go to your next level of suppliers.
Thank you, Bala. But mostly we do also see that most of the time, and here I'm going to just talk about the 80-20 rule, where most of the procurement professionals generally spend 80% of their valuable time at their offices or at work, and they are spending this time with those suppliers who contribute less than 20% to the budget spend. So that brings me to, Ali, if I can ask you a question on contract and supplier relationship management frameworks and how this can help cover performance as well as manage risk, just taking up from what Bala said.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, it's very important, as other speakers said, especially Mr. Kurt, about having a partnership relation with our supplier instead of just a vendor or a buying or a buyer-supplier relationship. In order to have such kind of relations, we should integrate ourselves with our suppliers and have such an intimate relationship that built up a partnership rather than being, as I said, a classical buyer-supplier relationship. This will help us to come with new innovations and to be more differentiated in the market. This also will let our suppliers bring to us new ideas and new approaches that will give us the competitive advantage among our rivals. The story Dr. Bala shared, it's a good example of such kind of integrated relationship. Because what I want to add in this story, the reason, besides what's said about Nokia, Mr. Dr. Bala, is that Nokia have a very integrated relationship with Philips people. They get to know about the incident immediately when it's happened. So they work into plan B and they find work on another source and they overcome the shortage that it may happen from this sudden stop of that factory of Philips. While Ericsson, they have very basic relationship with their suppliers and they get to know very late about this incident that no backup plan can be set. And as a result of that, they was out of the handset market. In 2001, January, Ericsson no more in the handset market. And they have more than $400 million loss, and their share value dropped 50% before the time of the fire. While Nokia, they met their targets, and they have a market share of grown by 3 to 30%, exactly the market share Ericsson lost that time.
Just to come in, sorry, to interrupt you. So what you're trying to say is that going forward, can we now place the suppliers not as vendors or suppliers, but can we look upon them and call them as partners?
Yeah.
Would the forum over here agree on that? That our suppliers are our partners, and if we look at them as partners, I think together the synergy can get more productive results for procurement.
And to achieve this, the way of communication and negotiations should be changed from the classical way. The kind of communication should be transparent and open book communication, and the type of doing business should be based on win-win scenarios. In this case, being a partner with your suppliers, as I said, they come with innovative ideas that it will be tailored for you and just for your business, which make you differentiated among the others of your competitors.
Thank you, Ali. I think I want to go to Abhijit in this case, because Abhijit, you look after a lot of sourcing and outbound suppliers across the globe. The question here is, and it's quite a debate in the procurement fraternity, that should we allow our users to actually get in touch with the suppliers, or should procurement not allow the users to get in touch with suppliers? I mean, what's your take on that? Because they've been speaking about relationship and vendor management and establishing the suppliers.
Yeah, thank you, Percy. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abhijit Devdar. I look after Centrum, which is a sourcing organization for NP Group. And we primarily come from the oil and gas and petrochemical sector. I would just share a couple of my experiences and in my previous opportunities back in India. My previous employer used to be key supply partners with Procter & Gamble. And incidentally, when I was in Switzerland, in Geneva, to meet the supply chain directors for the annual contracts, their marketing director walked in accidentally. And he said, I understand you guys are coming. Can you help us setting up something or help us supplying something into Czech Republic? We are wanting to get into that market. We currently have less than 10% market share, and we see that if we do our business well, we can really go to 30-35%. Henkel was their key competitor there. And the moment he gave us these ideas, we worked on it almost for a couple of years. And finally, we were able to deliver them that solution by sending some concentrates out of India. That helped them a scenario to believe in us, and they started treating us from and typically knowing that India was a third country sourcing for them all the way for Europe. They started treating us completely in a different way, the way they used to treat previously. We became, in fact, their #1 supplier for the chelates. We used to supply more than 50% beyond the standard norms of Procter & Gamble. So we typically became their supply partners instead of becoming a typical supplier.
So Abhijit, what you're saying is that it's very important to look beyond and across the entire supply chain.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me take this question now further, and Shailin, if you can rope in, because they've been talking about relationships, they've been talking about risk mitigation. Obviously, all this leads to cost savings, and as I opened the debate, we spoke about that most of the time the procurement and the contracts team show a lot of profits to the auditors and the finance and the stakeholders, but when it actually comes down at the end of the project cycle, we don't know where the money is gone. So if you were to look at savings initiative across the value chain, do you consider more than the unit cost when identifying procurement savings? And what would be your take in it, considering your experience with logistics and supply chain?
Thanks, Percy. I think, Percy, continuing this theme of partnership ahead, it's all about smart procurement and adding value to the value chain rather than just buying on unit price. It could be like a small example. A shipment of chocolates to be flown from London to Dubai, and Somebody says he'll bring it in 1 day, the other guy says, I'll bring it in 2 days, and the price you're paying for next day delivery is 25% higher. Believe me, we paid that, and the savings that were there by paying a higher price were much more than the unit cost. Another example of a pallet, we buy a plastic pallet which is 2x the cost, but its life is 10x. So it's not just about the unit cost, it's also about partnership, seeing value in the overall quality, cost of quality. It said that quality is never cheap, yeah, but cost of quality, end of the day, the life over a life cycle is always cheaper. And building partnerships is also very important. We do 100, 200 containers a month, and we have relationships with shipping industry where the shipping company comes to us on its own that, look, hold your shipments, the prices are going to fall. Next month, do something more. Same way, vice versa, when the prices are going up, they'll come to us and they'll say that, look, prices are going up next month. Come this month and move your containers more and more. So it's about partnership and not seeking just the unit value or the savings there. And in the long run, you save more money by doing smart procurement and not just cheap procurement.
Okay, thank you. So that brings me back to Ali. The question would be now, since he has sort of questioned it, can I use the term TCO or the total cost of ownership when we look at procurement instead of looking at unit price? Can we look at the entire product life cycle? And more so because now the industry is talking about CSR responsibilities. We are talking about renewable, rechargeable energy resources. What's your take on that?
Yes. Actually, nowadays, the procurement professionals should concentrate more on the total cost of acquisition rather than just looking to the initial purchase price. Because there is many factors that drive you to select a supplier or acquire a product or a service, not only looking to the initial purchase cost. Sometimes you will select a supplier with a higher purchase cost, but considering the other parts of the cost that sum up the total cost of acquisition, which is not only the owning cost, not only the buying cost, there is also owning cost, there is the logistic cost of that thing, the operating cost, and also the disposal cost. Taking all this into consideration, you will come with a conclusion that not whatever you paid cheap for it or you pay less for it, it will cost you less. So you have to look to the entire cycle. And always, it's not a matter of saving on the initial price. It's always a matter of how to add value on your bottom line of the business. So the concept of total cost of acquisition is very important, and sometimes it's overlooked, but procurement professionals should concentrate more and give it more attention.
Thank you, Ali. While we are speaking about costs and savings and total cost of ownership, it is also important to understand the procurement capability and the operating models. We did talk about it to a certain context in our first panel discussions, and we spoke about how the IoT or the Internet of Things or cloud or other platforms that are available actually lend a lot of backing to the procurement teams. But just going further, in a more simplistic way, since many industries have now adopted e-procurement or e-commerce as one of their significant buying mechanism and reverse auctions coming into play. Dr. Bala, can I ask you that, is your procurement function set up for success, and do those involved have the talent to succeed?
Thank you again, Percy. Today morning there was a discussion about presentation from Mr. Hamid from ETA regarding the e-procurement. I would like to emphasize that when we implemented e-procurement, we were one of the leading online auction companies in the Middle East, actually. One of the supplier who came to me and asked me, e-procurement will reduce the relationship between the buyer-supplier. He feels that when there is an e-procurement online negotiation, means there is no personal one-to-one discussion. This is not I told this supplier that e-procurement will not change the way you operate your business. It only automates your process. Also, it creates a lot of transparency. So here, I would like to couple e-procurement with your category management and spend management. So before you go into e-procurement, you need to do a proper spend analysis, which means you have to categorize your spend into in terms of risk and in terms of the value. High risk, high value; low risk, high value; low risk, low value. You have to categorize the spending. Then you have to make a proper supplier adoption. Again, while launching the online auctions, you have different techniques of launching the online auctions, where you have something called auction style and auction control. Auction style here, that means you will have open auction. That means it is open, price is open to all. People can see the price, but they don't know who is quoting the price. And there's something called blind auction, where people don't see the price each other. And there is something called auction control. Auction control means you can open auction, you can open to anybody in the market. Means anybody can bid for that auction if he is able to view the auction online. Or it can be by invitation only. Means only you can invite certain suppliers to bid online auction. So you have to use the right combination of auction style and auction control so that you can get the benefit of online auctions. And the proper spend management is essential before you go into a e-procurement strategy.
Thank you, Bala. And we all know that when we take on e-procurement, obviously it leads to three very important savings. And one is cost savings, the other is time savings, and obviously price savings. And as Dr. Bala mentioned about it, more and more companies, Bala, are not going for, Dr. Bala, are not going for open auctions. They adopt the L1, L2 theories. Taking on from there, let me again go back to you, Shailin, because we want to stretch beyond the savings part. And especially now, we know that in the supply chain, it is the secondary support activities that play a more important role. Earlier, when we talked of logistics, it was whatever comes in, goes out. But today, that's not the scene. The world going global, the world going web-based, and many, many industries across the globe talking about lean. So, Shailin, how will you put it? How will procurement elevate their game beyond savings to deliver real value to the organization?
I think the first and the foremost thing is that we have to be, very knowledgeable about what we are doing. And I find it pretty amazing that, a lot of people come to us, or when we meet, and, we have a logistics company called JECL Logistics 3 LLC. And when we offer our services, they say, no, I am getting 30 fills. Can you give 30 fills? I say, no, but we have WMS. Okay, what will I do with WMS? Do I really need it? Should I pay extra for that? So I feel so amazed that these are the people in procurement. They're buying something and they don't know what a warehouse management system is. Same way, we need to be very knowledgeable about what we are buying. And if we have a 360-degree knowledge about whatever we are doing, and each other's perspective, just knowing about the price is not good enough, because having a WMS may give you a zero inventory error, whereas that 30 fill guy may not even give you your daily inventory reports. So what are you getting into? Are you buying smart? Are you being knowledgeable? Do you have knowledge of just not what you want, but how that product is purchased or sold, or what are the factors that affect? You could be buying sea freight. You'll be very surprised. We used to do a lot of reverse auctions. I've worked in very large organizations like Reliance and Vedanta in India. And here we are doing a big, reverse auction for shipping. And you'll be surprised that one of the top 5 companies, 2 companies refuse to participate. They say, you give it to anyone, we don't care. So which means we did not step into their shoes and understand what was their concern about reverse auctions. Why didn't they want to go online? And believe you me, our first reverse auction on shipping failed miserably, because the guy who was L1, he never performed. He ran away before even placing one container. So you have to, have a 360-degree view, have a knowledge of what you're doing, what you really want. If you're buying a costly, say consignment of watches, you should know how you can track it. Yeah, there's a chip which you can, stick to either a container or this thing, which will give you either through GPS, the coordinates. If GPS is not available, as in a bottom of a sea, it will give you bottom of a shipping vessel, not the sea. It will give you vibration analysis, which means if somebody is trying to break the door of that container, it will give a siren if a theft attempt is being made. I mean, all these things, people don't care. They'll just go and say, okay, what if my consignment is costly? Let me go to the L1 vendor and buy it from him. So all those things, today we have a small GPS device in all our trucks. And we know that when they are idling, sitting, doing nothing for 2 hours and their engine is running, we know when they are overspeeding. So these are small things which, everybody should go out of their way to understand how things work and not just get 3 quotations and, go for the L1.
Thank you, Shailin. So basically you're talking about the role of RFID and technology and how it will actually help. But going forward and taking to you, Abhijit, since you mentioned about suppliers, what will it really take the procurement teams to alleviate the concerns, or let me put it this way, to attain maximum value from their suppliers? What should procurement do to get maximum value from the suppliers?
See, first and foremost, the purchasers have to understand quite thoroughly, and as Shailen said, what they want to buy and what are the attributes which are along with that product. It's not only the product per kg or per cent basis, it comes with a lot of attributes. So they have to themselves educate and understand and update themselves to know what they are really buying. It typically happens in this part of the world that somebody is buying something without even realizing what are the aspects of it. And as Shailin very correctly mentioned, so unless and until you are very strong and sharp about what you're buying, what are the attributes come along with that, it is very difficult. And then, of course, importantly, it is not only the low-cost country or low-cost sourcing, it also has to identify what are the risks in that. Without realizing those risks, you can get something out of, I have no negatives about China, but I did stay in China and did source huge amount of value out of China. But unless you stay there, you are able to connect to the people and get the best value out of them, you will never be able to succeed.
Absolutely, and everything low cost is not China.
Absolutely.
Having said that, my last question to any one of you panelists is the role of communication in procurement. And what we often see is that procurement personnel are very eager, or rather, let's say, very engaged talking with the suppliers or the partners. But unfortunately, you entirely miss out on discussing what you desire, what you want with your users. So communication plays an important role, both within the organization as well as with our vendor partners. Any take on that, or do you believe that, yes, this should continue and the suppliers should be around, able to mix with the users also? Just going back to the same question, Abhijit, again, do you still are convinced that, yes, the suppliers should meet the users?
Suppliers can definitely meet the users, but in presence of the purchasing person, so that he is also have a clarity what has been discussed about, so that he also has an edge. Otherwise, you will obviously see that over a period, the suppliers will say, oh, I know what your buyer needs. I will just go ahead and sell it to him. So your value obviously is not captured in that case.
Thank you, Abhijit. So in its entity, or just to summarize quickly, what we are saying is that the role of today's modern procurement agent or a purchaser or a buyer has to shift away from the tactical things that he or she is indulging in, which is basically running around invoices, small-time discounts, and paperwork, and you feel that you are a very busy person in the office, whereas actually what you should be engaged in is category management. You should be engaged in supplier relationship. You should be engaged in market involvement, going out in the market and identifying what are the new things that have come out, and how you basically looking forward towards more strategic planning. Can I open now and request the audience? I mean, if you have any questions, and I sincerely want the audience to take part in this panel discussions, because you have come all the way, you have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, or a lot of doubts in your mind. And I would like you to contribute over here, come out and ask questions. And every question is a great question. Yes, thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if we can get a microphone down here, please, to our gentleman. And if I can ask you to state your name, your company, and your question.
My name is Yusuf from Ifico Company. Actually, my question regarding what we are talking about, integration and partnering. This is, excuse me if I can ask Mr. Ali Saduddin. What just the most important tips or hints how to initiate the partnership between us and suppliers? For example, between contractors and suppliers. It's easy to say partnerships and partners, but actually within the daily deals, we found this very, very difficult to find this and initiate this relationship. partnering with our suppliers and subcontractors. Please, if you can advise us.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's a matter of mindset. Yani these things, it's not only on the level of the procurement professional. It should be part of the company DNA. The senior management of the company, including the CEO, should support such approach. And this, it can be with mutual respect between the organization and its suppliers, the collaboration, the transparency, always concentrate on, as I said, win-win scenarios, to be always fair with your suppliers, to work as partners, to come out with new ideas and new things that will end with an added value to the bottom line of the business. In these ways, for sure, you will have a partnership with your suppliers if, as I said, it was being supported by the company top management and executives, the senior, including the CEO. So this should be part of the DNA of the company. It's not a matter that I just said I will be a partner with my supplier and next day I will do it. No, it's something built by days and days and years. And it should be, as I said, an approach and a part of the company strategy.
Do we have any other question to go before we end the session? Yes, I think we have somebody over there right at the end. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got one here, Percy, and then we'll need to end. Thank you.
Okay.
How are you, Mr. Percy? Hope you recognize me. I'm Aishal Jabri from ADNOC.
Oh, welcome, sir. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Nowadays, we are facing an issue between the integrity of the process itself and building a relationship with the suppliers. Like, for example, our, what do you call, end user or the higher management, senior management, ask us to go further and negotiate with the lowest bidder. And this doesn't give the opportunity for the other bidders, in order to be fair with them, okay, to participate in that session. So how can we overcome such kind of issues? Because basically here the issue is the company interest overall and the supplier relationship as well. Do you understand me?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to give it to the panelists, but I'll just say one thing before that is, I think a company has a right approach, if you look at it in other contexts, is that the lowest bidder is not always the lowest. And therefore, it opens the door further towards possibility before we engage with the other suppliers.
Yeah, just to add on this one, it is not only the lowest supplier, also you should see the two things, capability and capacity of the supplier. That matters a lot. Maybe he's the lowest supplier, but he's not capable, or maybe he's overbooked, he don't have a capacity. So it's always, it is always advisable to negotiate with at least 3 suppliers, to keep 2 redundant suppliers in case of any procurement disruption to face eventuality.
Just to conclude before that, and you said capacity and capability, I would use the words tenacity and the willingness. And what is important over here is just once again, just not look at the price, let us look at the total cost of ownership. With that, let me thank all the panelists, Ali, Dr. Bala, Shailene, and Abhijit. Thank you very much. I think it was a great session. I hope you enjoyed the session. Any further question, please log in to blueoceanacademy.com and we will continue serving you and answering and alleviate your concerns, if any. Thank you once again.
And Percy, before you and the gentlemen leave, can I invite Debashri Banjari, the editor of Procurement Middle East magazine, back to the stage just to give a momentum to all of our gentlemen. Do remember, ladies and gentlemen, you can always tweet or use Instagram on hashtag IPSC Conference. Your active involvement is really encouraged. And may I please thank the 2 gentlemen for your questions. We do encourage it to throughout the day. Our next speaker is going to be Yusuf Baidoun. And I'm going to give a quick introduction to Yusuf shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, again, many thanks to our moderators and thanks to our panelists for today's discussion. Can I please invite Yusuf to the stage? For our next speech, we're going to be focusing on business sustainability. In this fast-paced developing country, competition is rife, and moreover, the demand for instant turnaround is increasingly high. It is important to socially and ethically be responsible when procuring nowadays, more so than it ever was before. Convenience and familiarity can overpower our choices, but if we can learn to be resourceful and start looking in new ways in procuring that are more sustainable, then I think that there will be a better overall result. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet our next speaker. It is Yusuf Beydoun, who is Head of Cargo Planning and Logistics from Dubai Airport, Cargo and Logistics. And he is here today to speak on the subject of procuring for business sustainability. Welcome, Yusuf.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not really sure which is harder to follow a panelist like the panelists that we had here today, who spoke very, very eloquently about the procurement, or to follow a wonderful and beautiful speaker as the mistress of ceremony here that we had earlier. You know, this reminds me, actually, you never want to be a speaker at the end of the day, and you never want to be a speaker after lunch. So for those of you who had rice and meat with mutton, please leave the room, because you're going to be sleeping in a few minutes anyway. I'm kidding, don't leave, stay. Actually, you know, a while back when I was in my previous life back in the United States, I was lucky enough to speak at a conference in Ohio. It was the Ohio Welfare Conference, and I chose to be the last speaker at the end of the day because of the distance to travel between Michigan and Ohio. So I figured, you know, it'd be easier to do it that way. So when I get there, and I'm looking at a big room just like this, and there's only one man sitting in the audience. And I'm like, really, am I that boring? There was nobody there, actually, to begin with. I mean, I hadn't even spoken yet. So I'm standing out there and I'm speaking. So I figured, you know, my time is there and I need to speak. So the guy that was actually sitting there waited till the end, and he got up and obviously he applauded my speech, and he said to me, would you do me a favor? I really like what you said. Would you mind staying until the end of the conference? Because I have a few things I need to discuss with you. I said, great, yeah, no problem. I'd be happy to. He goes, but I'm the next speaker, so that way you can actually stay with me as well. So he happened to be another speaker who didn't have anybody else but me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Yusuf Beydoun. I'm the Head of Cargo Planning and Compliance for Dubai Airports. What I'll be talking about today is basically procuring for business sustainability. But forgive me, I will make this not too generic. I will make this specific to the air cargo industry and cargo and logistics in general because of who I am and what I do. Obviously, this doesn't work. Oh, that does work. I can't see anything on this side, so I'll walk to this side. Actually, what we will have today, we will be discussing about what is sustainability procurement, what is the difference between standard procurement and sustainability procurement, and then also I'll be talking about the relevance that has to do with the airline industry and with our cargo and logistics in general, and that will be the E element of what we do, and the gentleman that were here before me earlier had spoken about it. I love the fact that someone had touched on the Internet of Things, and someone also talked about e-commerce. That would be the essence of my speech this afternoon. And I will be talking about the benefits and challenges that we all face when it comes to supply chain management. And finally, I will conclude by talking about what do we do to procure for the future. I guess I'm doing something wrong, so. Oh, right here. I figured it out. I got to click on this thing here. So basically, what does it mean? The definition of sustainable procurement. First of all, I'm not going to educate you on what this means, but it is a process. As you all agree, procurement in itself is a process. Somebody else mentioned earlier here, forgive me, I don't know the names of the gentlemen. I just walked in a few minutes ago. But the gentleman that were here before me spoke about procuring and then choosing 3 different companies and making sure that they actually have what you want and what you actually expect from them to have. The difference will be today, what I'm talking about is how do we actually make sure that the people we choose and the company that we choose to actually do the procurement for us or to handle any activities that we need them to handle, they actually look at the E or the environmental elements of this. And sustainability is not something that we actually take lightly. The environment is something that we all have a responsibility to maintain. The next item that we have is basically to look at the social economics. We need to look at the design of non-renewable energy or non-renewable resources. We also need to look at the use of what materials do these companies that we're procuring are using. We also need to look at and how and where and when do they manufacture. And what I mean by that is how, where, and when. There's a lot of elements that deals when it comes to manufacturing. There's many things that we do from when it comes to child labor laws, when it comes to using the right environment and the right material for our conditions of use. Okay, it's not working on this side either, so. Forgive me, this is like one of the trouble things I'm having here. Does it work if I push the button here? No? I know, but it's not working. It's taken forever. Anyway, so how do these two different elements differ from each other? One, for sure, is the fact that in addition to verifying eco claims for suppliers, we need to make sure that the procurement and strategic must be taken into account. The other things, if we look at in our industry, in what we do, today in cargo and logistics, we look at ways that we actually ship in the products, the packages that are being used, how they're actually being delivered, who is delivering them, and where are they delivering them to. These are all elements that must be taken into consideration. One of the things that must be looked at is the opportunities and how we can actually consolidate and deconsolidate. Many companies today are doing this for just the simple effective profits to the bottom line, but basically it has a bigger element to this. It has a much larger impact on the society and the environment that we have. When companies like FedEx or UPS or any of the other great freight forwarders that are out there, when they consolidate shipments to ship them, not only are they saving money, but they're also saving energy and fuel and cost and all of that. And that is great for their bottom line, but also it's excellent for our environment. Companies can also monitor their procurement practices by making sure the contracts that are awarded to the companies that are actually willing and ready to do the things that are expected from them to do. Relevant to us, and as I mentioned, I will talk in great details about this one. Today, many of us have actually used e-commerce. In this room, if you can raise your hand, how many of you have actually used e-commerce? Believe it or not, 100% of you have. You may not know it, but only saw a few hands that go up. But many of you have actually, or all of you, 100% of you have used e-commerce. Some of you have ordered something online, some of you have ordered something through the internet, and all of these things have actually, this is what e-commerce is all about. Today in Dubai and Dubai Cargo and Logistics, we are definitely pushing for the e-commerce element. We're making sure the E is actually something that we don't take for granted. The E must be the way of the future. Today, not only e-government are we practicing, but we're also using smart government, as His Highness Sheikh Mohammed just recently announced that all government will be mobile government and also smart government. We're no different. We also have to do the same things. Today, many of us still rely on a documentation that is shipped with a certain package that comes from abroad. No longer that will be needed in the near future. Everything, all the documentations that you would expect will be coming through an e-element, will be coming through the internet, will be coming through the, somehow be sent to you electronically. The e-freight initiative is something that we're working on, and we're happy to report that some of our partners like IATA and companies like freight forwarders and maybe even the integrators, some of them are here today. I mean, I know I saw some FedEx people in the back. It's great. E-freight is the way of the future. It is something that we really need to do to make sure we have. The next item that actually I'm going to talk a little bit more about is our e-documentation. Today, millions and millions of dollars is being spent on documentation, either printed or being transferred from one place to another. The e-documentation is something that, the only use for the documentation is between the shipper and the consignee, the person who's receiving it at the end. This is all that matters to it. Everything else in between is just to make sure that A is actually talking to B. We need to make sure, so there's no requirement for us to have just a piece of paper that actually has to go in a pouch following your shipment. Today in Dubai airports, actually in the past in Dubai airports, we've had 35 vehicles on a daily basis that are transporting documentation between different freight gates. I'm happy to report today that that number has been reduced extensively. And not only that, but the cost that is associated with documentation is unbelievable. I'm working with one country in particular today for the halal certificate for the meat that comes to Dubai. This one country in particular, if we were to actually automate their health certificate, their halal certificate, and send it electronically, we are saving $35 million a year. That's just one country from one source. So imagine what we can do if we do this for everyone else. The next thing that actually is very important today, the government is actually ready to take action. Dubai Customs have already made sure that their actually e-Mirsal is functional. And today you can clear your product, you can clear your documentation, you can clear your shipment, all electronically without leaving your office and the comfort of your home. You can do this. The only thing you have to do is send a driver to pick it up. And of course, there's a couple of other things that IATA is working on. One of them is Cargo 2000. That's to make sure that everyone is abiding by the e-freight element. And also the ECSD, the Electronic Security, Consignment Security Declarations. This is something that is a must. We all have to be talking to each other, the world out there. There's no reason why we need to subject people to more radiation. When somebody screens it and then this person is reliable that's screening it, this should be referred to, this should also be documented and communicated to everyone else out there. And of course, the initiative to make sure that the industry players are actually taking a part of this. This is very important for us, that the people who are here today who actually have the need to do this are doing it as well as everybody else is. All right. One of the things that if one is doing something, everybody else has to do it. Today, some of the relevance that to share with you, some of the great examples that are out there. If you take a look today, FedEx is using electric cars to transport documentations or packages or courier services. UPS is using something a little bit more. It's an air cycle, actually, believe it or not. It's an air bicycle, using it to deliver packages. Very soon, guess what's going to be used in the near future? Drones. Amazon is already talking about using the drones to actually deliver packages in remote areas. Why not? The Internet of Things is already here. Industry 4.0 is already out there. We're all doing our part. We need to make sure that the procurement is no exception. And of course, let me just, come on. Here we go. Cargo and logistics needs to be green. Many airports today around the world are proud to announce that they're actually going green. Emirates Airline has already announced it. Dubai Airports has already announced it. We're all doing our part to make sure that we're becoming more green than ever. Unfortunately, today, if we wanted to generate more power using the sun, the technology a few years ago was not there. So we couldn't really use solar panels in the UAE. And because of the heat, obviously, and the dust and the storms that we have and all of that stuff, the sandstorm. You want to take this and fix it? Thank you. So, but with great things that actually today with the technology the way it is and with the new technology that's out there, it's actually the time is now. We can actually use solar panels in the UAE today, and especially around airports like Dubai airports and Abu Dhabi airports and Sharjah airports. Those solar panels can generate much more energy than you expect it to be. So, green logistics, I can't push any buttons, so I'll just have to wait. Thank you. It works. Thank you. So, the benefits for all of us are the three fundamental areas that we actually need to look at. Many of you are actually focusing on this in your line of business. If you weren't, you need to really rethink your business. One is the cost that is associated with anything that we do. The second thing are the risks that we will take. The risks that we can take and the risks that we're willing to take in order for us to make sure that we have the right things. One of the things that actually somebody mentioned earlier, that we're all are abiding by this rule, that you have to have 3 different vendors and you gotta go with the lowest vendor that's out there, the lowest actually bidder that can come in. We all face this. But you know what? What is more important than our environment? What is more important than actually for us to actually stand out there and be proud to announce that, we're doing our part of CSR. We are doing our part of making sure that, we have our corporate social responsibility is done correctly. Yes, I know trying to save money is always on our top of our list, but we also have an environment to think of. And of course, the last thing that we need to look at in our business is revenue. Let's face it, we're all in the business to make money, not to pay money, but we can also do a few things in between to make sure that it's done the right way. And of course, the challenge will be, obviously, I'm not going to read all of that, but I just wanted to point out one thing. The last statement at the end, it says, of course, taking a sustainable approach to procurement requires corporate upheaval. It is not one person's responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. It is the responsibility of all. And if it doesn't come from the top of taking that action and making that decision and making it count, it will definitely be a problem for the people underneath you to do this. Yes, I know sometimes we empower people and say, go ahead and do the right thing. Make sure you get me a company that's actually doing the right environmental issue, taking care of the right environmental issues. But then we tie their hands by not giving them the freedom to make the decision that needs to be made, because we give them all of these things, but then we tell them, you need to find the lowest bidder. And in conclusion, forgive me, it must be me, it can't be your remote control. Here we go. In conclusion, growing numbers of organizations today have actually put pressure on the supply chain to demonstrate a sustainable action. Ladies and gentlemen, if we pay for a service, let's make sure we pay for the right service. Again, my name is Yusuf Baidoun. I'm the head of cargo planning and compliance, and I really enjoyed talking to you today. I will leave the next few minutes for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natarajan Ravi from Al Ghurair Foods. My question, this was a very good topic, and I think it's the latest on the sessions. My question was, what is the measurement, sustainability index measurement, and how are you going to rate it as per the organizations in the UAE? Is there any numerical factor, or are you going to rate companies on the sustainability, and how is the government looking into it to encourage that so that all the organizations work for that index and it is taken as a critical issue to improve the improvement scenario in this part of the world? Just your comments, please. Thank you.
I believe I heard your question. Please forgive me because actually I heard every other word that came through. But you were talking about what is the government willing to do to make sure that we all maintain a sustainable environment? Is that what you were asking me? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can we get a microphone for that gentleman, because I did not hear his question, if you don't mind. But let me just actually answer you the latter part of your question, because I think I heard it correctly. What is the government willing to do? Today, the message is clear. The message is definitely clear today from the UAE government and in Dubai in particular, that we all have to do our part, and the government is doing their part. If you take a look around, all the projects that are coming up today are becoming green projects. The metro itself is a great example. The metro itself is run by electricity. There is no, not only are we not using power, but we're also minimizing and optimizing the manpower resources that is used today. So we're no longer having to put actually a driver on that metro.
My question was, sustainability, what you were talking, is there is an index, because anything which is not measured, and there is an index or some kind of measuring parameter which is a standard which has been developed by the industry and which is rating any company which is doing this aspect measured in terms of what is the number like 4.1 or 5 or something like that, which rates you that you are doing a very good sustainable company, and how do you measure how that is measured?
I wish I have the answer to that question, but let me tell you my own experience. Just something that the index itself, and you're absolutely correct, it's very difficult today to determine what and how much we can actually measure these things by. But many companies today are actually taking an initiative to reduce their energy by a certain percentage, okay? To lower their energy cost by a certain percentage. I mean, let me just ask you this right now in the audience here. How many of you are still using halogen lights in your house? You wouldn't dare to answer that question because many of us are. Actually, many of us have actually even went down and changed our lights in our own home to LED lights to reduce the energy cost and all of that. I know you have, so thank you. That's perfect. But again, we need to really do our part. I mean, if it's not something that we actually take, just something really small to do this. And I know I have 3 minutes left, but I just wanted to share with you a story. One of my assistants, who's an officer working for us, it's not her role to go around and check the lights in all of the offices, but she does it anyway. She goes around and shuts the light. If somebody's not in their office, she shuts the lights. She even goes to the restrooms, only the women's restroom, huh? She goes to the restrooms and makes sure that, you know, that hose thing underneath the toilet is actually, the pressure is lowered, because many people, what they tend to do is they tend to hire it and then they keep it running. She does this. It's not something that she needs to do, but she does it because it's important that someone takes the initiative to take care of the environment. So that's how we measure, by making sure we do our part.
Yusuf, we have time for just one final question, and I know that there were 3 other gentlemen that had questions for you. Can I unite all of you in the coffee break? Yusuf, our last question.
Sure.
Today there are multiple activities that we use within the procurement department beyond negotiations. We talk about e-auctions, we talk about contracts, we talk about LPO issuance, and there's a lot of compliance and audit also that plays part in it. So out of all these, how do you define different units within a department, within your organization? So let's take an example. We have strategic sourcing, we have operational procurement, we have vendor management unit, and we have finance procurement, which is the finance control of all the procurement activities. How do you define in your organization a complete procurement department? If you can help us with your experience, would be appreciated.
You know, fortunately, with many companies, bureaucracy is always a plus. So whenever you have divisionals and when you have departmental activities, certain departments always have their own, like they're protected in certain areas. But how do we actually do this is basically the responsibility of all. It is all of the above that actually have to make sure that this is done the right way. It is all of the departments. It comes, like I mentioned in one of my slides, it's an up approach. It's top to bottom approach, not the other way around. It needs to be believed. It needs to be done from the top down. And if I didn't answer your question correctly, I'll be more than happy to discuss it later with you. Because I think I heard the question, maybe I heard it correctly or not. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Yusuf Beydoun speaking there, Head of Cargo Planning and Compliance, Dubai Airport. I know that there were many gentlemen who wanted questions. Can I match you with Yusuf during the next break? Yusuf, I believe you're going to be here, aren't you? Also, I have a momentum for you, Yusuf. So can I please invite onto the stage C. Cannon, the Divisional Manager of Canoe Machinery. Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for C. Cannon. And Yusuf, this is a small momentum to thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Cannon, and thank you, Yusuf. Now, next up is a presentation speech entitled Understanding Procurement in Projects. We all know that choosing the right materials under the right price to match for the right project equals a positive outcome. But how to achieve this? Our next speaker is Najmal Hussain, the Projects Director of Dubai South, formerly Dubai World Central, and founder, advisor of Project Management Institute local chapter. And he is going to enlighten us as our keynote speaker number 7. Ladies and gentlemen, Najmal Hussain. Thank you. All yours.
Does it work?
I hope so.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I totally feel like a stranger in this conference. This is one speech that has got nothing to do with procurement or supply chain, but I think it's still relevant because I'm going to try and discuss certain relevant points that we discuss all the time back in our offices when it comes to procurement. I don't know if I'm the wolf among the sheep or the sheep among the wolves, but then we're going to still discuss it anyway. Before we start, or before I get on to the details of integration points between projects and procurement, I'd like to show a set of statistics. Some statistics that I have derived from the Project Management Institute's Pulse of the Profession. These statistics show the failure consequences of projects. To start off, 88% of all organizations believe that project management is absolutely vital for an organization, simply because you have projects as a way to kind of meet and bridge strategy. If 88% of all organizations believe that project management is absolutely vital to encourage and meet the strategic objectives of a company, it's found out that only 61% of companies actually find it amazingly hard to implement project management. So when 88% of companies believe that project management is important, 61% of these very same companies actually find it very difficult to implement projects. What could be the factors? When we talk about these very organizations, only 17% of these organizations actually believe that projects are a way to actually meet strategy. I really don't know what the other 83% are actually doing, but then it's actually kind of surprising because when you look at projects and you look at the way that projects are done today, especially in Dubai and the Middle East, projects are absolutely vital to meet strategy. So then why do only 17% of companies believe that project management is strategically connected? 54% of all organizations understand the value of project management. However, within the Middle East, you have a better number. You have approximately 63% of organizations believing in the value of project management. When we drew out stats looking at project management and the kind of money it earns or wastes, we looked at the numbers, and the numbers are the following. Out of every 1 billion dirhams spent around the world on project management, we lose approximately 109 million dirhams. When we talk about the Middle East, we lose about 79 million dirhams for every 1 billion dirhams invested in projects. And what I'm going to try and do today is to try and relate certain factors looking at procurement and the fact that this is a conference on procurement, trying to touch upon those areas within procurement that could actually lead to such loss of value. We've tried to compare high-performance organizing with the low performance. I'm not saying that high-performing organizations are actually good or better than low-performing organizations. We're just looking at certain areas where what we call as high-performing organizations do better. What are those items that they focus on? What are those areas that they focus on? When we pulled out the stats, we found out that 89% of who we call as high-performing organizations actually do things better, 12 times better. We pulled out some stats, and these are the areas of focus. We've realized that when it comes to collecting requirements, and you put about an analysis between the high-performing organizations and the low-performing organizations, we looked at the collection of requirements. High-performing organizations actually can manage to pull out the stats better. They are in a position to collect requirements better, as compared to only 40% of low-performing organizations. When it comes to defining the scope of the project, understanding what the product is it that we're going to build out, we looked at numbers and we said, you actually have a good comparison. High-performing organizations are actually able to define scope at about 74% compared to low-performing organizations, which is at 64%. However, when you look at requirements, there is still a gap. The third point comes up, which is procurement. Now the gap starts to begin to become wider up. When we look at procurement, 45% of those organizations that are called high-performing actually meet targets, as compared to 15% of low-performing organizations. This is where the gap begins to widen. This is where projects begin to fail. When you look at numbers, communication starts to have a drastic effect on projects. Look at the numbers, 35% to 8%. When you look at risk management and change management, that's when projects end up in disaster. 32% versus 5%, and 31% versus 6%. So I think the reason I'm standing here today trying to emphasize on certain areas of project management, trying to emphasize that one point where I think I can make a difference. Looking at procurement, looking at what project managers need to know about procurement, looking at what procurement managers and commercial managers need to know about projects. How do we fill out the gap? What should we do in order to really put these two things together? So let me introduce the framework of project management. Let me try and put together what we as PMI, or me as a professional of Dubai South, understand the project framework as. For me, this is the framework. Me as a project director, me as a project manager, me as a project coordinator, I have one responsibility, and that is to integrate functions. I am there to integrate 9 functions. I need to understand my expectations that I have the stakeholders from. The stakeholders will need to provide me the understanding and the expectations. I need to know how to capture them. I need to integrate 4 core functions of project management with 4 facilitating functions. The 4 core functions being scope, time, cost, and quality, along with the facilitation functions of HR, communication, risk, and procurement. So what I'm going to try and do today is to analyze or look at 4 integration points that will help align procurement with the core functions. Try to understand what are the mistakes that we do as project managers? What are the expectations that we have from the procurement managers and the commercial managers? When we look at planning of a project, when we try and understand planning components, project managers don't really care about what contract types we select. But the whole understanding of requirements, the understanding of the scope of the project lies with the project manager and his team. So how is that the procurement manager is going to fit and understand a type of contract when the procurement manager does not understand what the scope of the work is? How does the project manager convince the procurement manager on what type of contract to select if he doesn't even understand what the contract types are available to him? That's why in Dubai or in the Middle East, we have one big word, and that's called lump sum. Everything is a lump sum contract. I think as project managers, we really need to understand contracts. We need to understand what kind of contracts are potentially available for us to fit our scope of work. We need to understand the difference between what kind of work fits a fixed price contract as compared to what kind of work fits a cost reimbursable contracts. We don't know, and I'm pretty sure that if you look around, many project managers and directors don't really understand or can't contemplate, should we really need or should we really drive our projects and our contracts to be economically adjusted, or should we just keep it as a firm fixed price? I'm sorry, my jargon on procurement could be a little weak, so I really excuse myself. But then, that's me. I am a project manager. We don't really understand where to use a firm fixed price contract and where to use an economic adjustment contract. We don't understand what kind of work deserves an incentive and whether we can actually provide an incentive. We don't really know if there are incentive-based contracts. We should realize that as project managers and people within the project industry, that cost reimbursable contracts, or what we call in the local market as cost plus contracts, are a much better way to look at projects and the scope of work that we do. If I'm going to construct a building and if I'm going to construct a warehouse and the project is going to run for 2 years, I don't really think a fixed price contract will do its job. If I'm going to fit and pull out procurement or fit out contracts, I don't think economic price adjustment contracts will do its job. We need to understand that if we are working with competitions or award-based contracts or award-based scope of work, we actually have something called as an award-based contract that can do its job. I've hardly seen projects use time and material-based contract. Even if it's for a small training, we go with a fixed price contract. Even if it's to be done with anything in regards to a small 15-day consultancy exercise, we still go with a fixed price contract. Whereas we could have saved money using a time and material-based contract. So I think my first point that I'm trying to make here is that the most important essence of a project, that is to perform against time and scope and cost, actually fails when we plan things wrong. We actually don't understand that the saving of money, the saving of time can be done better if we were to just choose the right kind of contracts. We don't understand the risks behind contracts. And I'm not very sure if the procurement department really looks at it from a project perspective. We don't realize that a cost plus percentage is actually more riskier than to a buyer than a fixed price contract. When we talk about executing a project, I've absolutely never been invited to a procurement meeting. I've never been invited to a commercial meeting where I can discuss and negotiate. However, I fail to understand how can a contract be signed if the people behind the project are not sitting in negotiation rooms? Because if I'm going to be executing the project, I actually need to agree with the contractor and the supplier on certain factors. I'm not sure if the procurement department or the project department understand that once the contract is signed, the contractor is actually part of my team. The contractor is actually part of me. If he fails, I will fail. If the biggest source of conflicts in any organization is roles and responsibilities, how can this not happen within me and the contractor? If during the negotiation rounds, if we do not discuss roles and responsibilities, how am I ever going to win this project? How am I ever going to execute this project? Because he and I will be fighting all the time. If we don't understand authorities, if we don't discuss authorities, if he's going to put together the single point of contact across to my project, and I have no authority on his people, how am I going to lead a team into execution? How am I going to worry about getting things sorted out as far as the project is concerned? We don't need to discuss schedules. Everybody understands schedules are very important. But then how is it reflected onto a contract? How do we discuss milestones and how do we discuss deliverables? How do we negotiate on quality? How many times have we heard this line that if my client signs, then I'll sign, or if he signs, then I'll sign? Because we don't know. I know what I want, but I don't know how to accept it. The criteria of acceptance are to be negotiated. The criteria of acceptance have to be put down on a contract. Because if these criteria of quality are not put down on a contract, then I don't think we can get the job done. So I believe, I'm not even getting into price and payment terms because that's really not my responsibility. I understand that I have the procurement team for that. I have the guys who are good at it for this. But then we need to understand that there are much more better things or much more other things to discuss as far as contract finalization is concerned, not just the price and payment terms. When we come into project execution, we have certain responsibilities of controlling the project and administering the contract. The contractor is almost blamed every time for a delay. Every time a supplier underperforms or the project underperforms, it is the supplier who is the cause of delay. However, we've never ever looked back at ourselves and said, have we done something wrong in administering a contract? I have tried to pull up 3 areas that I feel, honestly, are the reasons for project failure when it comes to contract administration. I see that if we do not have a proper change management system, the contract's going to fall apart. If project managers don't understand the value of incorporating changes into a contract, if changes are instructed verbally, changes are minuted in a minute meeting, but that change does not reflect onto a contract, the supplier is going to freak out in a while. If the supplier starts to believe that all I'm getting down is instructions, but these instructions do not really formalize into a contract amendment, the contract is not going to perform. The project is not going to perform. The second element that I think is very important to discuss is the management of claims within a project. Disputes are normal, disputes happen all the time. But if the supplier starts to notice and to believe that the client does not have a proper change management system or a claims management system, this is not going to work. He may accept a few disputes, but then as time goes on, he starts to realize that I'm starting to lose money on the project. Performance goes down. You don't manage change, performance goes down. You don't manage disputes, performance goes down. More important, just the fact that you sign a delivery order, just the fact that you sign an invoice doesn't guarantee payments. Payments happen only when the money reaches the account of the contractor. Having a proper payment system in place is probably one of the most important things that people need to realize. If you ever look back at your own financial department, you will really realize that it's almost impossible for a contractor to go around asking for his money. It's your responsibility as project managers or people within the department to actually manage the payment system for the contractor, ensuring that he gets payments on time. I've had projects, me myself, I've had projects where the advance payment has been paid to a contractor, and then at the end of the project, the rest of the payment starts discussing. You can imagine the consequences on the project that we've done. You can imagine the cash flow that has been impacted to the contractor. When it comes to closing out a project managers love the fact that the product is ready. Project managers love the fact that the physical structure is done and I'm ready to go home. And I forget everything to do with contract closure. I forget the fact that there are damages. I forget the fact that there are breaches. There are remedies, there are outstanding payments, there are outstanding claims, and there are outstanding changes to be sorted out. We never enter into a final negotiation settlement with the consultant or the contractor. So being the devil's advocate in this conference, I think one of the reasons I'm standing here is to actually put a point across to both teams down here. People who work with projects from the procurement department, people who are the project managers representing the company and the project. to look at everything, not just the execution of the job. There are things around within the procurement department, within the procurement area, that needs to be sorted and looked at. I've put together a slide that talks about agility of organizations, looking at 10 points that I feel are absolutely vital when it comes to project agility, and of course, organizational agility. I'd like you to look at point number 6, which is basically the management of interdisciplinary project teams. 53% of organizations that can be considered agile focus on interdisciplinary project teams. The fact that you can make procurement talk to technical, you can make procurement talk to finance, you can make procurement talk to risk. So I leave you with a note from Winston Churchill. He said, however beautiful the strategy, you should always look at the results. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, of course, finishing there is Najmal Hussain. And can I invite on stage Othman Taboub, the Senior Director, Supply Chain of Al Fakar Tobacco Factory. And he is going to award you with a momentum of thanks. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now the final coffee break before we start wrapping up the day. Enjoy!